How's it going, everyone? In this video we are going to discuss the different abilities in the Baldur's Gate 3 rules, or the D&D 5th edition rules, and which abilities you should pick. Okay, what are the important ones, which ones are not so important, and how that relates to which are the important or not important skills to select. So, in short, there's 6 abilities. 2 of them are important no matter what class you play. 2 of them are not important except for very specific situations. And the other 2, well, they might or might not be important depending on your playstyle. So let's go straight into it. And we'll also go into some specific calculations that have to do with some specific abilities. Okay, so the 2 that are important no matter what, these are Constitution and Wisdom. It doesn't matter what class you're playing, and here's why. Okay, Constitution determines your hit points, which is how many hits of damage, how many points of damage can your character take before they lose consciousness, right? So that's pretty important no matter who you're playing as. Now, how your hit points, which is right here, how that's calculated, so it depends on what class you're playing. Each class has a certain hit dice, okay? Let me go to the class selection screen. There we go. So the hit dice is a certain number used to determine hit points, and here's how it works. So it's 8 for most classes. The 2 main spellcasting classes, wizards and sorcerers, it's a little bit less. It's 6. Okay, and then the 3 fighting classes, fighter, paladin, and ranger, it's a bit higher than 8. It's 10. And highest is for barbarian. That's like the most fighting class. It's even higher than 10. It's 12. So that's an easy way to remember it. Okay, it's 8 by default. If you're one of the main spellcaster classes, it's 2 less than that, drops it down to 6. If you're one of the main fighting classes, it's 2 more than that, bumps it up to 10. Barbarian's even higher, bumps it up to 12. Okay, so you start with that number of hit points, but you also add your Constitution bonus. Okay, so here the Constitution bonus is 2, right? Because like 15 minus 10 is 5. Divide that by 2, rounding down, you get 2, right? So his HP is 14, right? The 12, because he's a barbarian, plus the 2, which is your Constitution bonus. But every single level up, your hit points increases by a roll of your hit dice. So again, for a barbarian, that's a d12 that you're rolling, a 12-sided dice, right? For a fighter, it would be a 10-sided dice. For a sorcerer, it would be a 6-sided dice. Every single time you level up, your HP increases by whatever you roll on that hit dice, plus your Constitution bonus. Every single level, right? So if your Constitution bonus is plus 2, you get plus 2 per level, okay? If it's plus 3, you get plus 3 per level, right? So like by level 10, plus 2 means plus 20 HP, okay? Whereas if you have plus 3 Constitution bonus, well then by level 10, that's plus 30 HP, right? So Constitution is very, very important for that reason, okay? Now, why is Wisdom important? Well, your Wisdom saves are used a lot in the game to allow your character to resist something that's done to them, like a spell effect that might confuse them or scare them or something like that. Okay, so we talked about saving throws in the first video in this series. Okay, so Wisdom saving throws in particular are very, very common, right? So to have your character be resistant to certain emotional or magical effects, Wisdom saving throws are very important. Another thing that's important is something called Perception. Okay, now let me go to that skill here. So there's Perception. Okay, this is a Wisdom-based skill. Okay, so your Perception bonus is your Wisdom bonus. And then if you actually have the skill, right, if you're proficient in it, you also add your Proficiency bonus. Okay, but whether you're proficient in it or not, you're going to be using Perception a lot. Okay, because you're going to be using it to notice things that are around you. Okay, sometimes you'll do a perception check throughout the game to see if you notice certain details, like there could be some button hidden somewhere, And maybe you'll notice it on your own, but maybe not. But if you pass that perception check, well, then that button will light up and be shiny, right? So you can see it more easily. There could be secret passages, there could be buried treasure, that sort of thing. A lot of stuff that you notice with perception. But there's also something called passive perception, okay, which doesn't depend on a dice roll. Your passive perception is 10 plus your wisdom bonus plus your proficiency in perception if you have the perception scale. If not, it's just 10 plus your wisdom bonus, okay? And that number is what a creature has to roll, that number or higher, in order to hide from you, okay? So if you have a high wisdom score, okay, then you get a high wisdom bonus, then your passive perception is higher, so it's more difficult for creatures to hide from you using stealth, okay? So that's why wisdom is very important, okay? Your wisdom saves protect you from a lot of effects, harmful effects that could affect you in the game. It also helps you notice hidden details or hidden monsters, okay? So constitution and wisdom, they are important no matter who you're playing as, okay? Now, what's not as important? And that is strength and intelligence, okay? So intelligence is important if you are a wizard, okay? Because that is your spellcasting ability if you're a wizard, intelligence. If you're not playing a wizard, intelligence, not really important, all right? Now, what does this mean, spellcasting ability? Okay, so when you cast a spell, there could be a certain bonus involved. Like, for example, it's an attack spell, right? You add a bonus to your roll. That bonus is your spellcasting ability, which depends on what class you are. Okay, so if you are, let me go back to the classes. Okay, so if you're a wizard, then your spellcasting ability is intelligence, right? So you'll be adding your intelligence bonus to your dice rolls when casting a spell. Wizard is the only class for which your spellcasting ability is intelligence. Okay, so it's really the only class for which you need high intelligence. All right. Now some spells are spells where you add a bonus. Other spells are ones where the creature has to roll against what's called your spell DC. Okay, this is like a difficulty challenge rating of your spells, and that's equal to 8 plus your bonus for your spellcasting ability, which again is intelligence for wizards. Okay, so 8 plus that bonus plus your proficiency score. Okay, so if we select a wizard here, there we go, and we go to abilities, okay, we see their intelligence is 17, so plus 3 is their bonus, right? So their DC for their spells would be 8 plus their proficiency bonus, which is 2, so that makes 10, plus their intelligence bonus, which is 3, so that makes 13. Okay, so some of the spells they cast, the creatures would have to roll 13 or higher to resist that spell's effect. All right, other spells they cast, they would just add that plus 3 to their dice roll when casting the spell, and that would determine how effective the spell is. Strength is needed if you're playing a melee fighter, okay? Not fighter, like a melee warrior, right? So it doesn't have to be the fighter class, right? Any class that you want to be focused on using melee weapons, right? So typically that's barbarian, fighter, paladin, all right? Then you want high strength for that, okay? Because strength is going to determine your ability to hit, okay? Your attack bonus when you attack is going to be your strength bonus, right? You add that to your roll to see if you hit the target. And then when you deal damage, you're also adding your strength bonus to that, right? So if you're using a melee fighter, then and only then you need strength. And even then, sometimes you might have a melee fighter that uses dexterity, okay? Because some weapons are called finesse weapons, right? So they're melee weapons for which you have a choice. You can use your strength or your dexterity, whatever is higher, to use those particular subset of melee weapons, that particular subset of melee weapons. Okay, so that's why strength and intelligence, they're not important except for these specific cases. The other two that we haven't discussed yet are dexterity and charisma. Okay, so whether these are important or not depends on your playstyle. Okay, so dexterity, this is your attack bonus and damage bonus with ranged weapons. It's also your attack bonus and damage bonus for a subset of melee weapons called finesse weapons. Okay, so what that means, when you roll the dice to see if you can hit the target, you add your dexterity bonus, and then when you roll the dice for damage, you also add your dexterity bonus. Dexterity also determines your turn in combat. Okay, so when combat starts, everyone rolls initiative, which is basically rolling dexterity. Okay, you're rolling your 20-sided dice and adding your dexterity bonus, and then whoever rolls the highest goes first. Whoever rolls second highest goes second. Whoever rolls third highest goes third in like their turn in combat, and so on. And the creatures and the monsters are rolling this as well. Okay, so that's also determined by dexterity. The other thing determined by dexterity is your armor class. All right, so your dexterity bonus is added to 10 to determine what your armor class is, and your armor class is how difficult you are to hit. So this character, for example, their dexterity bonus is 1. So if they're not wearing any armor, okay, their armor class would be 10 plus 1, which is 11. So anyone trying to hit the character would roll a 20-sided dice, add maybe their proficiency bonus, they would add their attack bonus, and if they get 11 or higher, then they hit this character. Okay, so the higher your dexterity, the higher your dexterity bonus, the higher your armor class, the more difficult you are to hit. Now that said, you can also just wear armor to make your character more difficult to hit. Okay, because armor boosts your armor class, and some armor will actually negate your dexterity bonus, right? So for example, like if armor is bulky, heavy, right, you can't dodge out of the way as well, because that's the idea behind dexterity bonus boosting armor class. It means you're dodging out of the way. So some armor might be bulky, right? So it boosts your armor class directly, but then it also says dexterity bonus to armor class cannot exceed 2, for example. So then it doesn't matter what your dexterity bonus is, your addition to armor class from that dexterity bonus cannot be any bigger than 2. Okay, so that sort of thing does happen. So it's good and bad. Okay, the good thing is that you could have low dexterity but still really high armor class if you're wearing really good armor. But the bad thing is that, well, you could have really high dexterity, but it doesn't contribute to your armor class if you're wearing really bulky armor, right? So that's how dexterity may be important if you care about that stuff. If you want your character to easily dodge out of the way, if they're not wearing bulky armor, if you want to move first in combat, then dexterity is important. If you're using finesse weapons or ranged weapons, dexterity is important. And then if we go to our dexterity skills, we have stealth, okay, which is a very important one. Okay, this is a dexterity based skill, and this is if you're trying to hide from opponents. Okay, and you could roll your attacks with advantage if you're hidden. Okay, very important if you're playing a rogue, you need sneak attack. Okay, so for rogues, dexterity is very important. So the stealth skill is a dexterity skill. Alright, so keep that in mind if you want to be stealthy. Sleight of hand, okay, which is used to pick locks, to disarm traps. That's also a dexterity based skill. Alright, so if you want to be that kind of player, you don't want to bother like having to find a key for every single chest, you want to be good at picking locks, dexterity is important for that as well. Okay, so that's dexterity. The other one is charisma. Well, charisma is like influencing others in social settings, right? So if we go to the charisma-based skills, they're at the bottom here. We have deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion. This really affects conversation options, okay, and your ability to convince players to get them to do what you want, whether in a friendly way through persuasion or a non-friendly way through intimidation. Performance can actually gain you money in the game in some situations. Deception's your ability to lie and others believing you, right? So if all those conversation options are of interest to you, well then charisma would be important for you too. Okay, now there is one more calculation which we have not discussed, which is your carrying capacity. Now that is based on your strength. It's not particularly important. It just determines how much weight you can carry. Okay, so if you're carrying too many heavy items, you reach your carrying capacity, then certain bad things happen, but you could just have other people carry your items for you. You can leave your items at camp. So having a low carrying capacity really is not that much of an issue, but it does exist, okay? And what it is, it's just 40 plus 10 times your strength. Okay, so this character's strength here is 17, okay? So multiply that by 10, that's 170. Add 40, that's 210, okay? So 210 is this character's carrying capacity. That's the maximum weight they can carry. And every item in the game has a certain weight associated with it, right? So all the items you're carrying, their weight is added up. And as long as it's under 80% of your carrying capacity, you're fine. If it is over 80%, then your jump distance is shorter, you move slower, okay? If you reach above 93% of your carrying capacity, well then you can't climb or jump, your walking speed is even slower, you have disadvantage on your ability checks and your attack rolls, and your saving throws for the physical traits, constitution, strength, and dexterity, you have disadvantage on those saving throws as well. Okay, so you really don't want to exceed 80% of your carrying capacity, but again, it's easy to avoid doing that. Just pass your items to someone else or send it to town. Okay, so again, really it's just to recap based on your class. Okay, Constitution and Wisdom you need no matter what. Intelligence, you need it to be high really only if you're a wizard. Strength, you need it to be high only if you're a melee fighter who's not using finesse weapons. Okay, and then Dexterity, Charisma, well, it depends on what kind of play style you want, whether you need those or not. Okay. Now also depending on your class, if you're a spellcaster, you might need Wisdom or Charisma as your spellcasting ability, right? So remember, Intelligence is the wizard spellcasting modifier. For other spellcasters, it's either Wisdom or Charisma. Okay, so if we go back to our classes, okay, so for bards it is Charisma, for clerics it's Wisdom, for sorcerers, warlocks, it is Charisma as well. For paladins, it's Charisma. And for druids and rangers, so for druids, it's Wisdom. And for rangers, for rangers, I'm actually not sure. You know what? I'll look it up and I'll put that in the comments. Rangers aren't really spellcasters that much, but they can cast spells. I hope you enjoyed that, and until next time.